Hey guys, tonight we're going back to one of the most peaceful, intimate, and quietly powerful moments in the life of Jesus. You sit on a quiet shore. The sky above is still dark stars, just beginning to surrender to the approaching dawn. The air is crisp, not cold, but cool enough that your robe doesn't quite keep it out. The sand beneath your feet is damp soft, and the only sound is the rhythmic lapping of gentle waves on the Sea of Galilee. There's a faint smell of salt smoke and something cooking. A small fire crackles nearby, its embers glowing orange against the blue-gray morning. Beside it stands a man alone, patiently tending a few fish over the flame. He glances up and sees you. He doesn't say a word, just smiles. And yes, if you'd been there, you probably wouldn't have understood either. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me where you're listening from and what time it is over there. I love reading those. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The story begins not with a miracle, but with weariness. You've been walking for hours with the disciples, their sandals kicking up dust, their silence heavy. It's been days since the world shifted, since Jesus died, since the tomb was found empty. Joy should be bubbling, but uncertainty clings. You sense it? They're not sure what happens next. They've returned to what they know: the sea, the boat, the nets. The boat rocks gently as Peter and the others step aboard. The wood is worn, the sails stiff but familiar. You take a spot near the edge and watch as they shove off. The sea embraces them like an old friend, calm, deep, and deceptively still. They fish through the night. The stars drift across the sky. The lantern on the boat sways, casting long shadows across the deck. You listen to the water slap against the hull, to the creak of rope and oar, to the occasional sigh as another empty net comes up. You might think they're discouraged, but really they're grieving. They're remembering. Peter especially. You notice the way he stares at the water, like he's looking for something he lost. Maybe courage, maybe forgiveness. At one point, Thomas mutters something about trying a different side of the boat. Nathanael shrugs. The Zebedee brothers exchange a glance but say nothing. The nets are lowered again. Silence. Historically, the Sea of Galilee was and still is rich with tilapia, a fish once known as St. Peter's fish. Fishermen often worked all night using torchlight to lure the fish upward, but even then, success wasn't guaranteed. And tonight, nothing. The fringe fact many overlook is that this exact fishing trip mirrors the first time Peter ever met Jesus. Back then, he also fished all night and caught nothing, until a stranger told him where to cast. Is this a test A callback? Historians still argue whether this post-resurrection appearance was symbolic or strategic. Some say it was Jesus' way of resetting everything, beginning again where it all started. Others say it simply shows that even resurrection doesn't erase the need for breakfast. And then, you hear it. Friends. A voice calls from the shoreline, soft but clear. Have you caught anything? You all look toward the voice, squinting. The sun is just beginning to rise, orange bleeding into purple, and the figure is hard to make out. He's standing beside a fire, smoke curling lazily into the sky. Peter shields his eyes. No, he shouts back, a little embarrassed. Throw your net on the right side, the man says, and you'll find some. It's oddly specific and oddly familiar. Peter doesn't hesitate. He nods and the net is cast again. You lean over the edge, watching it sink below. The boat tilts slightly and then jerks. It's full. Fish thrash and tangle the net, straining, almost breaking. James laughs in disbelief. John stares at the man on the shore. It's the Lord, he whispers. And Peter doesn't wait. He throws on his tunic, dives headfirst into the water, and swims. His strokes are wild, driven by something more than joy. Regret, maybe. Longing. A hope that this time Jesus will still want him. The boat follows slowly behind, dragging the heavy netfish, flapping and glittering like coins in the early light. The moment is messy, chaotic, yet oddly tender. And on the shore, the man waits by the fire. There's already fish laid out and bread, 2 warm, simple loaves. He watches them approach, his eyes kind, like he's been expecting this reunion for a very long time. You step onto the shore with them, the sand cool and welcoming. The fire warms your face. Come and have breakfast, he says. No grand sermon, no thunder, just an invitation. The risen Lord who conquered death and walked out of the tomb is making breakfast for his friends, quietly, kindly, as if to say, I'm still here. I still care about the little things, even your hunger. The smoke from the fire curls upward into the soft morning air. The heat is gentle, not overwhelming, just enough to take the chill off your hands. You kneel close, noticing how the flames lick at the edges of a flat stone where the fish are already cooking. Jesus doesn't rush anyone. He just sits, his eyes moving from face to face as the disciples gather. Some are wet, like Peter water dripping from their robes. Others are exhausted from rowing and hauling the net, their arms trembling slightly, not just from fatigue, but from awe. You sit among them, feeling the warmth of the fire slowly sink into your skin. No one speaks for a while. What could they possibly say? You think back to the last time Jesus shared a meal with them, bread broken at Passover, wine passed from hand to hand. That night ended in shadows, betrayal, and blood. But this morning, this meal is different, simple, silent, sacred. The fish on the fire crackles and pops. The smell, rich, earthy, salty, fills the air. Jesus stands and begins to serve. One by one, he hands each of them a piece of the bread, a portion of the fish. And when he gets to you, his hands linger for a second longer. There are scars still there. He doesn't hide them. This moment feels small, but you know it isn't. Even now, thousands of years later, scholars continue to marvel at this breakfast. Some say it was a deliberate echo of the feeding of the 5,000, where bread and fish fed a multitude. Others say it was about restoration, not just of Peter, but of all the disciples, anchoring them again in the presence of the one who called them in the first place. And then there's the quirky detail the fire is made of charcoal. That may not seem important, but it's the only other time in the Bible that a charcoal fire is mentioned besides the one Peter stood near when he denied Jesus 3 times. A smoky, sensory echo. The same smell, the same crackle, the same warmth, but a different outcome. You wonder if Peter noticed. He sits quietly, chewing slowly, eyes on the fire. There's something heavy in him. Joy, yes, but something else too. Maybe fear. Maybe he's waiting. The sea behind you glistens, now touched fully by the sun. A few birds call overhead, and in the distance the boat bobs gently with the net still heavy with fish. It's strange how something as ordinary as breakfast could feel like holy ground. But here you are sharing a meal with the resurrected Jesus. This breakfast by the sea wasn't just about food. Historians note that in Jewish tradition, eating together after an offense or betrayal was a powerful act of forgiveness. In that culture, to dine with someone meant restoration, peace. And yet nothing is being said aloud about what happened. Not yet. You glance at Peter again. He's fidgeting, tearing small pieces of bread, not eating them. You can almost hear the unspoken words pressing against his chest. The boat creaks in the distance. A breeze rustles the reeds. Jesus finishes his meal and turns slightly toward Peter. There's a shift in the air, not dramatic, just expectant. He looks directly at him. Simon, son of John. He says softly, using Peter's old name. The name before the nickname. The name from before the courage and the keys to the kingdom. Do you love me more than these? The fire crackles. Peter looks up. Yes, Lord, he says quickly. You know that I love you. Jesus nods. Feed my lambs. A strange request maybe if you're not used to his metaphors, but you've heard him before. You remember I am the good shepherd. My sheep know my voice. This isn't about livestock. This is about care, about people. A pause. Simon, son of John, Jesus says again, do you love me? You feel Peter flinch. Why ask again? Yes, Lord, he says a little quieter. You know that I love you. Tend my sheep, Jesus replies, still looking directly at him. Then a third time, soft like the tide washing the shore. Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter's breath catches. His face darkens. He looks down. Lord, he says you know everything. You know that I love you. And Jesus, without missing a beat, says again, feed my sheep. It's not just repetition, it's redemption. 3 questions for 3 denials. Not accusations, just invitations. Jesus isn't rubbing salt in a wound, he's healing it. Layer by layer, like a gardener gently pressing new soil over a once dry root. You glance at the others. They're watching, but respectfully. No one interrupts. This is between Jesus and Peter. Historians still argue whether this moment was a public reinstatement or a private reconciliation made visible. Some suggest that by the third question, Peter understood the connection to his earlier failure. Others believe Jesus was subtly preparing him for the role he'd soon play, leading a fragile church in an uncertain world. Whatever the case, it worked. Peter sits straighter now, his hands still the bread forgotten. A weight has lifted. Maybe not all of it, but enough. You can feel the change in the air like when the first light of dawn finally washes over the hills, and everything suddenly looks a little clearer. Jesus didn't rebuke him. He didn't review the betrayal. He just asked, "Do you love me?" And in that question, Peter found his way back. You sit in the glow of that fire a little longer, listening to the waves, the crackle, and the slow return of conversation as the meal winds down. No more nets today. No more fishing. Just warmth healing, and breakfast on the beach with God. The morning ripens as the fire softens to glowing embers. You can feel the heat easing now, like it knows its work is almost done. A bird hops nearby, curious. The disciples shift around, some leaning back against driftwood, others stretching their legs. But your eyes are fixed on the one standing, Jesus. He turns his gaze from Peter to the rest of the group, but his presence still holds the air in quiet reverence. He hasn't preached, not formally. He hasn't performed a miracle, not in the dramatic sense. But everything about this moment feels like both. There's something deeply human about what just happened. Breakfast, firelight, the smell of grilled fish, simple words exchanged without ceremony. And yet, you feel it, this is holy ground. You scan the faces of the men around you. They're still taking it in each in their own way. For some, it's joy. For others, maybe confusion. Thomas, always thoughtful, seems to be puzzling over something. John sits closest to Jesus, like always quiet, watchful, content just to be near. And then Jesus starts to walk, not far, just a slow amble down the beach, the hem of his robe brushing through sea foam. You rise instinctively and follow at a respectful distance. Peter is beside him, still quiet, his brow furrowed in thought. You trail a few steps behind, and so does John. Jesus speaks again, this time to Peter, but it's heavier. Truly, truly I say to you, he begins when you were young, you dressed yourself and went wherever you wanted. But when you're old, you will stretch out your hands, and someone else will dress you and take you where you do not want to go. The words settle slowly like stones dropped in water. You glance at Peter. He doesn't respond right away. He just walks barefoot in the wet sand, absorbing it. It's not a threat. It's a prophecy. One wrapped in love, but serious nonetheless. Historians have long debated this moment. Many agree it was Jesus foretelling Peter's eventual martyrdom, perhaps even hinting at crucifixion, with the phrase, "stretch out your hands." And indeed, early church tradition holds that Peter was crucified in Rome, upside down by his own request, feeling unworthy to die in the same manner as his Lord. But here by the sea, those words are still new, still settling. Jesus then adds simply, "Follow me." You hear it differently now. It's not just an invitation to walk after him down the shore, it's a call to a life that may be difficult, costly, but full of purpose. Peter slows a little, thoughtful. Behind you, John walks quietly, the youngest of them, the one Jesus loved in a particularly tender way. His steps are nearly silent. Peter glances back, notices John, and asks a question, one that seems casual at first but carries layers. "Lord, what about him?" Jesus doesn't stop walking. He answers calmly, almost gently, "If I want him to remain until I return, what is that to you? You follow me." You don't hear any anger in his voice, just clarity. It's one of those statements that rings with double meaning. On the surface, it's a reminder not to compare callings. But underneath, it's an affirmation. Each path is different. Each journey tailored. Not lesser, not greater, just distinct. That moment lives on in quiet controversy. Some early Christians misunderstood Jesus' words, thinking John would live forever. But even John later clarified it. Jesus didn't say I wouldn't die. Only that if he wanted me to remain, it wasn't Peter's concern. And isn't that the crux of it? We all walk our own stretch of shoreline. Some with loud callings, others with quiet ones. Some are called to feed lambs, others to write down what they saw. You keep walking, letting their voices drift into the breeze behind you. And then you feel it, that strange sense of presence, like something vast and eternal is walking beside you though you can't see him. Only feel him. Jesus isn't giving out blueprints, he's giving out himself. Not answers, but companionship. Not safety, but love. He doesn't promise Peter ease only truth, and a path worth following. The sky above has turned fully golden now. The sea shimmers in response. The day is awake. And for a fleeting moment, you imagine what it might have been like to walk beside him, not in a vision, not in a dream, but with sand between your toes and his voice in your ears. You don't need to imagine too hard, because in a strange, quiet way, you are walking with him now. As Jesus and Peter continue ahead, you pause. The waves roll in and out, speaking their own language, ancient and unchanged. The shoreline stretches out in both directions, one way leading toward the world, the other toward the unknown. You know which one you'll take, the one where you follow. You linger on the beach for a moment longer, watching the distant shapes of Jesus and Peter continue their slow walk. The sun has fully risen, now casting a golden shimmer across the Sea of Galilee. It paints everything in gentle light. The rocks, the boat still floating offshore, the footprints in the sand already softening with each passing wave. You hear laughter behind you. It's not loud but real. The disciples are talking again quietly like a family after a long, hard night. They're passing around more bread, pointing toward the horizon, swapping memories like old fishermen do. You walk back toward them. The net is still there, sprawled awkwardly on the pebbles, fish glinting in the sun. One of the men counts aloud, 1, 2, 3, until he reaches with astonishment 153. It seems oddly specific, doesn't it? That number 153 has been the subject of debate for centuries. Some say it's symbolic, the number of known fish species at the time. Others say it points to a deeper numerical meaning hidden in Scripture, while some scholars admit perhaps it's just how many fish were there and the disciples happen to be precise about it. A quirky detail that feels too random to be anything but true. You reach down to touch one. It's still warm, still alive with the memory of the sea. This catch, it wasn't just a gift. It was a sign. A reminder that the abundance of God doesn't come through striving, but through obedience, even when the command feels too simple to make sense. Cast the net on the right side, he said. And they did. That's all. A reminder that miracles don't always need thunder to be real. You sit again near the fire. The embers glow softly, their heat now steady and low. Jesus has returned to the circle. He's sitting once more this time with his back to the water eyes, scanning the group as if he's memorizing them, one by one. He knows what's coming, not just the cross he already bore, but the crosses they will bear, the cities they will travel to, the prisons, the pulpits, the fear and the faith. But today, none of that is spoken. Today, he just wants to be with them. He breaks off another piece of bread and hands it to you, smiling. You take it warm, soft in the center, a little crisp on the edge. The kind of bread that sticks to your fingers and fills your mouth with comfort. You taste salt, maybe from the fish, maybe from your own hands. The fire pops, suddenly a log collapsing inward. You glance at the others. James and John are sitting side by side as they always have their faces relaxed. Thomas, who once said he needed to see the wounds to believe, now looks at Jesus as though belief is no longer a question. Nathanael leans on a rock, staring at the sea, perhaps remembering the fig tree moment where it all began. Each of them has a story. Each of them carries a name given by a savior who saw what they could be before they ever did. And you feel like one of them. You remember something Jesus said before, where 2 or more are gathered in my name, I am there. And somehow this morning makes that feel literal. The simplicity of it all is what overwhelms you most. Not a sermon, not a healing, not a crowd. Just a quiet breakfast? On a beach? You reach toward the fire to warm your hands again, and as you do, you think about how different this moment is from the chaos of Jerusalem. There, the streets had roared with crowds, soldiers' accusations. Here, just the hush of water, the snap of twigs in the flame, and the steady breathing of men who once ran but now sit close. It's said that after the resurrection, Jesus appeared multiple times over 40 days. But this appearance, this one by the sea, is often noted by historians as one of the most personal, most tangible. Some believe it was a deliberate return to origin. This is Galilee, after all, the place where many of the disciples were first called, where they dropped their nets and followed him. Now, after betrayal, after death, after confusion and fear, he meets them here again, in the place it all began. Historians still debate whether Jesus was offering a reset or a reminder? Was he restarting the mission or simply showing that death was not the end that love once given could never be lost? You think back to your own life. The times you've drifted, the nights of fruitless labor, the quiet shame of denial not spoken aloud perhaps, but lived in choices, in doubt, in distance. And yet, here is Jesus. No lectures, no lightning. Just come and eat. Just, do you love me? Just follow me. The waves kiss the shore again. The boat is still out there, the net heavy. A few fish flop lazily on the rocks, unaware they've become part of something eternal. You close your eyes and listen to the sea, to the wind, to the quiet rhythm of redemption. This is not just a story, it's an invitation. Not just to remember, but to return. To come back to the fire, to sit, to be known, and to follow. The fire is nothing more now than a slow pulse of glowing coals, their orange heartbeat steady beneath a soft layer of ash. You brush your hands together, stand and begin to walk again, this time not to follow Jesus and Peter down the beach, but to walk a little apart, to take it in. The shore stretches out endlessly in both directions, a natural timeline made of sand and tide, and as you walk, every footstep feels like a question, not of doubt, but of wonder. What just happened? The Son of God, the one who calmed storms, raised the dead, stood before governors and high priests, just cooked breakfast over a fire. And not for kings or scholars, but for fishermen. It's beautiful in a way that makes your chest ache, and quietly disarming. If you were expecting a thunderous post-resurrection speech this morning, would surprise you. But Jesus knew better. He knew what his friends needed. Not answers, presence. It's something historians often miss when they study this scene. They look for theological implications, symbols, echoes of prophecy, and they're not wrong to. But they sometimes forget the sheer humanness of it. A man scarred by nails bending to break bread and feed his friends. Not hovering above the earth, but kneeling beside a fire. You kick a small shell with your foot and watch it skip once, twice, then sink. The sea stretches wide, calm, and infinite, like the heart of the one who walked across it. You glance back toward the fire. The disciples are rising, brushing off sand, smiling in that quiet way people do after a good meal and a surprising reunion. John is speaking softly to Thomas. Peter stands slightly apart, arms crossed, eyes still distant. You can tell he's remembering. You remember too, that night. The courtyard, the cold, the fire, the way Peter's voice shook when the servant girl asked if he knew Jesus, and the rooster sharp in the silence. Once, then twice, then 3 times. 3 denials. One for each opportunity he had to say, yes, I know him. I was with him. But he didn't. And now here he is. On another morning, another fire, 3 questions, each one like a key unlocking a door Peter thought had been sealed forever. Jesus never mentioned the denials outright, didn't say I told you so, didn't retell the story for the others to hear. He didn't need to, because Peter knew, and Jesus knew Peter knew. It's the kind of mercy that leaves you undone, not loud, not grand, just personal and precise. A mercy that wraps itself around your worst moments and offers you a hand instead of a lecture. Do you love me? 3 times. And 3 times Peter answered, yes. Was it awkward? Probably. Emotional? Definitely. But it was also healing. Not in the instant magical way we sometimes hope for, but in the steady, warm, slow-burning way that only true restoration brings. You sit on a driftwood log and think how many people spend their lives carrying regrets like Peter did that night, and how many miss the fire by the sea, the one that still burns. Scholars sometimes argue over whether Peter truly grasped what Jesus was doing in that moment. Some say he was confused, unsure whether he was being tested or trusted. Others believe he understood it instantly, that the 3 questions were like balm, each one undoing a layer of shame. And then there's a fringe tradition, quirky lesser known, that says Peter wept not during the denials, but only later when Jesus cooked him breakfast. That something about being fed by the one you failed broke him in a way nothing else could. Whether that's true or not, you can feel the weight of it now. It's written in Peter's posture. He walks slowly, not burdened, but reverent, humbled. You get up and move toward the edge of the water again, where small waves curl over your toes. The day is growing brighter. Soon the world will return. The crowds, the missions, the sermons. But for now, the moment is suspended, still quiet, soaked in the holy simplicity of fish bread, fire, and forgiveness. Jesus says nothing more for a while. He just watches them, watches you. And then at last he speaks again, not to preach, but to invite. He simply says, "Follow me." The same words he said years ago when these same men dropped their nets and followed a stranger who spoke with authority and love. Now they hear them again, and this time they carry new weight. They're not just a call to adventure, they're a call to endurance, to shepherding, to laying down their lives, but still a call. You look down the shoreline and imagine the path you'd walk if you answered that voice. It wouldn't be easy, but it would be good, and it would never be walked alone. Follow me, not just back then, but today, here, now. You stand in the sand, the wind brushing your face, and you say nothing. You don't have to. Your feet are already moving. You follow slowly barefoot, now your steps softened by the sand. Each footprint behind you fills gently with seawater like a quiet promise that your path, even when washed away, leaves a trace in something eternal. Up ahead, Jesus walks at a pace that lets you catch up but never forces it. He doesn't turn around, doesn't demand anything. He just walks, letting the rhythm of the waves do the talking. The other disciples begin to gather their things. The boat will eventually drift back into the work it was made for. But for now, no one is rushing. Something about the morning seems to hold time and place. You notice Peter still near the water's edge, bent slightly over the net again. Not pulling it in, just looking at the fish. 153. He's thinking, maybe praying. His mouth moves, but you can't hear what he says. And then Jesus turns slightly toward him, not quite a full pivot, just enough to speak with eyes soft and knowing. "Feed my sheep." There it is again, that phrase. At first glance, it sounds pastoral, like a metaphor for kindness or leadership. But the more you let it echo in your mind, the deeper it goes. It's a mandate, a trust, a gentle reminder that love must become action. You look again at Peter, rough hands, sun-darkened skin eyes that have seen too much for a lifetime. He isn't the same man who once sank beneath the water during a storm or who pulled out a sword in the garden. He's been sifted, refined, not perfect, but ready. Historians often say that this breakfast scene wasn't just reconciliation, it was Peter's ordination, his true calling moment. Not when Jesus first said, "Follow me," but when he said, "Feed my sheep." The shift from disciple to shepherd. And in that you sense something bigger. Jesus wasn't just restoring friendship, he was handing over responsibility. The early church wouldn't be built on charisma or cleverness, but on love, on men who had failed and been forgiven, on men who had eaten breakfast with God beside a smoky fire on a sleepy shore. And maybe that's the real miracle, that Jesus trusted them again. You take a deep breath. The air smells of salt bread and something older than time. There's a stillness now, a reverent hush that feels less like silence and more like space, sacred room to process. You walk farther down the shoreline and sit beneath a crooked olive tree growing from a rocky outcrop. Its branches stretch low, casting spotted shadows across the sand. You press your back against the trunk, feel the roughness of bark and the slow warmth of the rising sun. You think about sheep. You've heard that word a lot in Scripture. Jesus called himself the Good Shepherd, the one who lays down his life, the one who knows his sheep and is known by them. And now he asks Peter to become that kind of shepherd, not a lord, not a ruler, but a caretaker of souls. What kind of love does it take to become that? Not just affection, not even passion, but the kind of love that stays. The kind that shows up at dawn with a fire already lit. The kind that forgives not just once, but over and over. You let your head tilt back against the tree. Birds flit through the leaves above you. Somewhere nearby, a lizard skitters across a stone. The world is very much alive, but everything feels softened as if even nature is honoring the quiet weight of this moment. Then, as you're almost drifting into a nap, a thought surfaces. Where was Judas during all of this? A strange question, maybe. But you wonder. He should have been here too, shouldn't he? You remember how he once sat with them around another fire. How he dipped bread into the same bowl as Jesus. How his betrayal wasn't born from hatred, but perhaps from disillusionment. A slow fade rather than a sharp fall. There's a fringe theory whispered in some early writings that Judas regretted everything too quickly. That if he had waited just one more day, perhaps he too would have been invited to breakfast, sat beside Peter, been asked 3 times, "Do you love me?" But we'll never know. And maybe that's the point. Jesus will always light the fire, but you still have to come to the shore. You open your eyes again. The disciples are packing up now. Someone has pushed the boat a little farther into the shallows. The nets are folded. The fish, some are being salted for travel. The rest are likely to be shared with nearby families. Even in their awe, they remember to give. You feel a nudge in your heart. Something simple, something true. Breakfast with Jesus is not just about what he does for you. It's about what you go and do after. The sea whispers back as if to say, "Go on." You rise slowly from beneath the olive tree, brushing soft sand from your robe. The day is warmer now and the light more golden than pale. It shimmers on the surface of the sea and casts long, soft shadows behind every rock, every step. As you return to the group, the scent of breakfast still lingers in the air, now mixed with the briny scent of drying nets and the faint sun-warmed fragrance of wild grass. Jesus hasn't moved far. He's still among them, present, steady, unhurried. And then you notice something quietly beautiful. He's watching Peter, not with scrutiny, with love. Peter stands before him again, unsure of what to do with his hands, like a man called forward, but not quite sure how to walk. Jesus speaks once more. "Simon, son of John," he says again. Yes, the old name, the full name. The name Peter once answered to before faith gave him a new one. "Do you love me?" It's not the first time today. And Peter's voice, though still firm, carries a note of weariness. "Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you." Then comes the same command again. "Feed my sheep." But this time it lands differently. This is no longer about healing a wound. It's about planning a calling. And in that calling, you hear an echo of something bigger than Peter himself. You hear the weight of responsibility, the burden of love that leads not only to service, but sacrifice. You've probably heard that phrase, "feed my sheep," quoted before, maybe even on a Sunday morning sermon. But here by this fire with smoke curling into the air and the waves repeating their gentle rhythm, it's more than a line from scripture. It's a vow. It's what love looks like with sleeves rolled up. Jesus doesn't give Peter a crown. He gives him a pasture. And sheep aren't easy. They wander, they forget, they panic, they bite, but they matter. And Peter, who once leapt overboard, who once spoke too fast, who once denied the very man now feeding him, is being asked to care for them, all of them. You shift your gaze to the horizon, where the sky meets the sea in a blur of light. You realize this isn't just Peter's story, it's yours too. Jesus is still asking, "Do you love me?" Not in a vague poetic way, not in song lyrics or passing sentiment, but in the way that leads to something. Action, surrender, devotion. And then one more time he speaks again. But it's different this time. "Truly, truly, I say to you, when you were young, you dressed yourself and went where you wanted. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands." You watch Peter's face change. The words settle heavily into him like stones dropped into still water. There's something both terrifying and peaceful in them. Jesus doesn't sugarcoat it. He never has. The road ahead will be hard. It will require everything Peter has and then more. Historians agree this was a foretelling, the kind of detail passed down through the early church like a solemn treasure. Peter would give his life for the flock, for the name, for the love that once called to him over breakfast and a fire. Some say he was crucified upside down in Rome under Emperor Nero. Others say his hands were indeed stretched out just as Jesus said, but even now scholars debate the exact circumstances. What's not debated is the heart. Peter was no longer the man from the courtyard. He was becoming something else, a shepherd, a foundation, a living answer to the question, "Do you love me?" You step forward again, not out of duty, but because something in you recognizes the moment. It's not just Peter's commission, it's a universal one. To love Jesus not only with words, but with presence, with humility, with compassion that feeds others spiritually, emotionally, even physically. And Jesus, who once fed thousands with a few loaves and fish, now hands over that calling to a flawed man by the sea. You wonder why he didn't pick someone cleaner, someone more composed, someone who hadn't denied him under pressure. But maybe that's the point. Maybe the fire by the sea wasn't built for the strong, but for the returning. Maybe the one who failed spectacularly is the one best prepared to offer grace to others. You think back to your own moments of denial. Not in word, but in action, in silence, in distance. And you wonder, what if you could hear that question too? Do you love me? What would you say? The sun climbs higher and the group begins to stir. Jesus turns once more to walk, and you feet bare and heart full follow. Not because you have all the answers, but because he does. And he made you breakfast. You walk slowly, letting your feet sink into the sand with each step, the rhythm of your movement now matching the steady, gentle breath of the sea beside you. The shoreline stretches wide, an open invitation, unhurried and peaceful. And yet inside something stirs. The words Jesus spoke to Peter still echo in your ears, feed my sheep. Not impress them, not lead them with power, not protect your reputation. Just feed them. You start to wonder what that really means. It sounds simple, but the more you sit with it, the more weight it carries. Feed them what? Truth, hope, love, grace that doesn't come with a receipt. The early church would later be described not by its buildings or its budgets, but by how its people cared for one another, broke bread together, carried one another's burdens. The world would look at them and say, see how they love. And maybe it all began here, on a shore, over fish and bread, with a Savior who asked questions instead of giving speeches. You look up to see Peter walking with John now. They're not saying much, but the ease between them is familiar. Like brothers, they've known each other since nets and boats were all they had. And it's Peter who breaks the quiet. What about him? You hear it clearly, more curiosity than jealousy. A simple question may be born of old rivalry or maybe just a desire to understand. Peter had been given his path. Now he wants to know about John's. Jesus, still walking ahead, slows his pace. He doesn't look annoyed, just clear. If I want him to remain until I return, what is that to you? Then again, even gentler, you follow me. You pause. It's such a quiet rebuke, but also a mercy. A reminder. We each walk our own road with God. Some carry crosses publicly. Others carry them quietly in unseen faithfulness. Some are called to lead. Others are called to write. Some to heal. Some to serve. But all are called to follow. Historians often point to this moment as the beginning of a legend, the belief among early Christians that John might never die, that he'd live until Jesus returned. It became so widespread that John himself had to clarify in his gospel, Jesus didn't say I wouldn't die. He just said, if I remain, that's not Peter's concern. Still, the rumor persisted, whispers of immortality. But John seemed unbothered, maybe even amused. And that too teaches something. Faith isn't a competition, it's a journey, and Jesus walks beside each person differently. Some will walk far, some will walk short distances, but every path matters. You find a small flat stone near the water and sit again. The sun is high now and the waves sparkle like scattered coins tossed by heaven. You reflect on the beauty of the question, what about him? Because you've asked it too, haven't you? Why is their life easier? Why did they get the opportunity? Why am I struggling while they seem to glide? But Jesus always brings it back gently. You follow me. Not their story, not their pace, not their path, just yours. And somehow in that there is peace, because your path walked with him will be enough. The breeze lifts again. A gull cries overhead. Somewhere behind you, the disciples begin gathering the last of their things. It's nearly time to leave. But something in you doesn't want to move just yet. You let your fingers skim across the surface of the water. It's cool, clean, and full of life, just like this morning. You think about how simple Jesus made everything. He didn't need a temple or trumpet or title. Just a fire, a meal, a few questions, and a love deep enough to redeem the world. You imagine Peter decades from now walking into cities, standing before crowds facing prison and threats, and remembering this morning. This quiet breakfast. This commission spoken not with thunder, but with kindness. He wouldn't always get it right. None of them would. But they'd never forget this day. And neither will you. You stand again brushing sand from your hands, the memory of the sea lingering on your fingers. The beach is quieter now. The fire has faded to soft gray ashes, and the last hints of breakfast crumbs fish. Bones flattened places in the sand are beginning to disappear beneath the shuffle of feet and the rising tide. The disciples are moving toward the boat again, gathering their cloaks, tightening sandals, murmuring softly among themselves. But Jesus, he lingers. He walks slowly, eyes scanning the lake, the hills, the sky. Like someone taking in a place he once loved, a familiar trail he knows he won't walk again in the same way. You feel it before you know it. This is goodbye. Not the final kind, but a gentle parting, like the last hug before a long journey. Not the kind that clings, but the kind that blesses. Galilee has always meant something sacred. It's not Jerusalem. It's not the temple. It's not where the world expected God to appear. But this lake, these hills. This is where he called them. Where the kingdom began not in thrones or power, but in mustard seeds and fishermen, in quiet sermons by the water, in miracles performed not for spectacle, but for restoration. And now he walks its edge one last time. You step slowly after him, not to intrude, just to be near, to witness. Peter too stays close. He doesn't talk much now. You can tell his heart is full, and not with answers, just awe, the kind that makes you quiet. John follows at a distance. He doesn't need to speak. His presence is his testimony, the one Jesus loved, walking just behind like always. As Jesus pauses on a small outcrop of rock overlooking the sea, you remember the first time he called Peter here. When he said, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." That same shoreline, that same call, and now full circle. Historians say Galilee was not a political center. It wasn't where leaders gathered or revolutions were born. But perhaps that's why Jesus loved it, because real transformation doesn't always start in palaces. It starts in quiet places, by fires, with bread, with forgiveness. Jesus looks out across the water one last time, and you wonder what he sees. Does he see Pentecost in Peter's eyes? Does he see churches in every direction stretching far beyond these hills? Does he see broken hearts learning to heal? Does he see you? He turns slowly and begins walking inland up a narrow path between olive trees. The others follow now, not just with their feet, but with new understanding. Because this isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of their part in it. There's a sacred rhythm in all this, you realize. Jesus appears, Jesus feeds, Jesus forgives, and then Jesus sends. That rhythm continues even now, maybe especially now. The quirky detail. In all of the resurrection appearances, Jesus never shows up with grandeur. No shining robes, no halos, no choirs. Just wounds and warmth. You remember how he broke bread in Emmaus, how he passed through locked doors just to breathe peace, how he invited Thomas to touch his scars, not to shame him, but to invite belief. And here again, he offers food before he offers instruction. Because nourishment comes before calling, and calling comes before mission. And mission only matters when it's fueled by love. You pause again on the path, letting the others move ahead. From this angle, the sea is spread wide like a scroll. You imagine Jesus writing something across it, not with ink, but with presence. His footprints fade behind him, but the message lingers. You are not disqualified by your failure. You are not forgotten in your confusion. You are not too late. The fire still burns quiet, warm, steady. You just have to come close. A breeze moves through the trees, rustling branches like whispers. Somewhere in the distance, a child laughs. Life continues. But this morning, this place, it feels outside of time. And maybe that's what grace is. A pause, a warmth, a second chance cooked over coals and served with quiet eyes. You turn to look once more at the sea, and you whisper not because anyone will hear, but because he already knows. Yes, Lord, you know that I love you. You step away from the water's edge, and something in you feels different. Not louder, not brighter, but steadier. As though the rhythm of the waves has sunk into your chest. As though something ancient has taken root in your spirit. You walk slowly, and the breeze follows you inland. Behind you, the boat bobs gently, still tethered to the shore, as if waiting for someone to come back, but no one does. Not yet. The path Jesus walks now weaves through familiar land. Olive trees twist skyward, and fields roll in quiet patches of green. He walks with the disciples, and you stay close behind. They aren't asking questions anymore. There's a kind of sacred stillness in them now, like they're trying to memorize the sound of his footsteps, the sway of his robe, the way he breathes. No one wants to be the first to speak, but then Peter does. Only a whisper. Do you love me? You're not sure if he's repeating it aloud or saying it to himself, but the moment he does, the words echo inside you too. That question doesn't stop at Peter. It travels through time, through hearts, through all the walls we build around our guilt and hesitation. Do you love me? It's not a guilt trip. It's not an accusation. It's a hand extended across the flames of our worst nights, offering something we don't always believe we deserve restoration. And what comes next when we say yes? A mission, a path, not a throne, not applause, just a cross to carry and people to feed. That's the great reversal of it all. The kingdom Jesus speaks of is upside down. Greatness looks like servanthood. Victory looks like surrender. Glory looks like a man cooking fish for friends who failed him. You walk past a fig tree, its branches curling low leaves trembling in the breeze. John touches the bark as he passes, maybe remembering the first time he saw Jesus under a fig tree. You recall that moment too, Nathanael amazed that Jesus had seen him there before they'd ever met. Jesus sees people before they see him. That's been true from the beginning. It's why Peter's denial didn't surprise him. It's why Thomas's doubts didn't drive him away. It's why this breakfast wasn't about proving anything, it was about love. There's an ancient debate among scholars, was Peter's love for Jesus the same kind of love Jesus asked for? In Greek, Jesus first uses agapao, a deep sacrificial love, and Peter responds with phileo, a brotherly affection. Some suggest Peter wasn't ready to claim that full love again, still haunted by his failure. Others say it's a linguistic footnote, a reflection of intimacy rather than inadequacy. But either way, Jesus met Peter where he was. He accepted the love Peter could give and called him anyway. That's something you carry with you. Now, Jesus doesn't wait for perfect love. He receives honest love, and he builds the kingdom with that. You continue walking until the trees give way to a small rise. From the hilltop, the sea lies behind you and the land opens ahead. Villages dot the distance and paths split like roots in all directions. Soon these men will scatter, some to preach, some to write, some to die, and some to wait. But for now they're here, together. And Jesus, risen but still bearing wounds, stands among them like a shepherd in the middle of his flock. His presence is like a quiet light, steady and unassuming, and yet impossible to ignore. You remember how many times he said, "Fear not," how often he said, "Peace be with you." And you realize he meant it, not just in emergencies, not just in upper rooms with locked doors, but in everyday mornings, in post-failure walks, in conversations with people still carrying shame. He meant peace. He is peace. You close your eyes for a moment. You let the warmth of the sun on your face become a reminder of his gaze, gentle, unwavering, unafraid of your past. You whisper again without needing to be heard, "Yes, Lord, you know I love you." And somehow in that moment, you know you're being heard. Because the question was never meant to trap you. It was meant to free you, to lift your chin, to place bread in your hand, to set your feet moving again, not back but forward. You open your eyes, and for a brief second, you see it all at once. The beach, the boat, the fire, the bread, the wounds, the voice, the call, and your place in it. The hillside is quiet, and you sit for a moment on a smooth rock warmed by the sun. The land around you hums softly with life, buzzing insects, a distant flock of birds, and the occasional rustle of olive leaves in the breeze. It all blends together, a kind of natural symphony composed not with instruments, but with stillness. You let yourself breathe deeply. The question, "Do you love me?" still echoes within you, not demanding an answer, but inviting one. You realize now it was never meant to be answered once. It's the kind of question that lives with you, that travels with you, that waits patiently for you to answer again tomorrow and the next day. You watch Peter from a distance. His back is turned now, but something in his shoulders has changed. There's less tension, more weight, but not the crushing kind. The kind that gives a man purpose, anchors him. You wonder what's running through his mind. Is he reliving the courtyard, the questions, the rooster's cry? Or is he holding tight to that simple charcoal fire, the smell of fish, the voice that called him not out of shame, but out of love? There's a word for what he's just experienced. It isn't punishment. It isn't discipline. It's restoration. And restoration doesn't erase the past. It doesn't pretend the pain didn't happen. It simply rewrites what comes next. You hear movement behind you. The disciples are shifting again, gathering their things with quiet purpose. There's a sense among them now, not of finality, but of preparation. Something is coming. They can feel it. You can feel it. And Jesus knows it too. He walks a little apart now, not distant, but watchful, always watching, as if he's reading each of their hearts like open scrolls, understanding every hope, every fear, every hidden hesitation. You glance over at Thomas. You remember the room where he doubted how he said he wouldn't believe unless he could see and touch the wounds. You also remember the look on his face when Jesus let him. No anger, no shame, just truth offered freely. Hands extended, side revealed. There's a fringe theory, almost a legend, that Thomas later traveled as far as India to share the story of the risen Christ. That he planted churches there, loved people deeply, and eventually gave his life for the same faith he once doubted. Historians argue about the specifics. Some say the timelines don't quite match. Others insist the evidence is compelling. But either way, what matters most isn't geography, it's transformation. The doubter became the missionary, the coward became the shepherd, the deserters became the foundation. And you begin to see your own place in this unlikely lineage. Not as an outsider watching holy things from a distance, but as someone invited to breakfast, to firelight, to forgiveness. You remember another morning one long before this one when Jesus told a parable about lost sheep, about a shepherd who left 99 behind to find the one who wandered, how when he found it, he didn't rebuke it. He lifted it up. He brought it home. Peter was that one, wasn't he? But then again, so were you. You stand, brush the dust from your robe again, and look back down toward the sea. It glistens still, like it's remembering what just happened along its shore. You wonder if years from now, people will come to this place and sit by this same lake, trying to feel what you feel now. Maybe they will. Maybe they won't. But what happened here won't be lost, because it's written in the lives that came after. Not in ink, but in footsteps, in choices, in quiet obediences, in the way people loved one another when no one was watching. You hear Jesus speak again, not loudly, but clearly enough for everyone to hear. Peace be with you. It's the same phrase he's used more than once now, but this time it wraps around you differently. Not just a greeting, not just a blessing, but a seal, a benediction for a new beginning. You repeat it to yourself quietly, peace be with me, and somehow it is. The path turns gently as you follow Jesus and the others farther up the hill. You feel the rise in elevation only slightly, the sun warming your shoulders, the earth firm beneath your feet, and the soft, persistent whisper of wind brushing through olive branches. Something about this climb feels symbolic, like each step is drawing the disciples and you closer to a deeper understanding. You remember how many mountains show up in Jesus' story. Mountains where he prayed, mountains where he taught, mountains where he was transfigured in brilliant light, and eventually a hill where he was crucified. And now, this quiet slope where the resurrected Christ walks with those he loves. You glance over at John. His steps are light, unhurried. His eyes stay on Jesus almost constantly, as if afraid he'll miss even a flicker of expression. Peter walks beside him, but more grounded now. Not as impulsive as he once was, not lighter, but stronger in that way people become after they've been forgiven for the worst thing they've done. They all look different in subtle ways, not visibly older, not changed by time, but marked by something else, an invisible imprint left by grace. You're reminded of something Jesus once said, "Blessed are those who have not seen and yet believe." You wonder if he was thinking of you when he said it. The others didn't know at the time, but they were living history. Every step, every word, every glance from Jesus was becoming sacred memory. Memory that would one day be retold in catacombs, in hushed circles, in letters scrawled by candlelight, and eventually in languages they'd never speak in places they'd never visit. Some scholars argue that this breakfast by the sea is one of the most human of all resurrection appearances, not just in content, but in tone. No thrones, no armies, just a beach, a fire, and a group of tired, wondering, still learning men. And maybe that's the point. Because the risen Jesus didn't come back to dazzle, he came back to restore. You reach a flat part of the path, and the sea comes back into view behind you, stretched wide like an open scroll. You pause there, and something catches your attention. A patch of flattened grass as if someone had been there before you, sitting, waiting. You kneel beside it and run your fingers over the blades, still bent, still warm. The past and present feel like they're overlapping. Like this story written thousands of years ago is still unfolding around you. Like you're not just reading it, but walking inside it. You close your eyes for a moment, and suddenly you're back at the fire. The crackle of coals, the smell of fish, the gentle cadence of Jesus saying, "Come and have breakfast." That phrase, so ordinary yet extraordinary, lingers. Because what king invites his followers to breakfast? What savior cooks for the people who abandoned him? What kind of God doesn't just rise from the grave, but walks the beach with bare feet and serves food with his own scarred hands? Only one. And he's not finished. You reopen your eyes. The group is moving again and you rise to follow. You wonder about what's next for them. You know some of it, how Peter will lead in Jerusalem, how John will become a voice of deep spiritual insight, how others will spread the news to distant lands. Some will die for what they believe. Others will be forgotten by name, but never by God. But for now, none of them are rushing. They're just walking with Jesus, as if they know these moments are among the last before he ascends, before the world changes again, before they step into history as more than fishermen and tax collectors, before they become shepherds and storytellers and vessels for something bigger than themselves. You think back to Peter's 3 denials. You think of that cold night and the fire he stood by to keep warm, pretending he didn't know the man now walking beside him again. And then you think of this morning, the new fire, the new questions, the new beginning. Historians sometimes call this moment Peter's reinstatement, but you think maybe it's more than that. Maybe it's a reminder that failure isn't a dead end, that calling doesn't expire. That love, true love, invites you back not once, but always. You trail behind the others, now letting their voices become background music, soft and comforting. The wind picks up slightly, tugging at your sleeves. In the distance, the hills rise higher, and you can already sense soon this chapter will close. But the story, it's just beginning. The trail winds upward through patches of wild thyme and short grasses, and the air shifts from salty to crisp. Each breath feels cleaner here, thinner perhaps, but more alive. You keep climbing with the group, your pace unhurried. No one speaks much now. It's the kind of silence that doesn't need filling. Jesus walks ahead calm as ever, his shoulders steady, his steps deliberate, and even though no words pass between you, his presence speaks louder than anything. You notice how the disciples glance at him now, not with confusion like they once did, or even the starry-eyed awe of those early days. This is different. This is reverence. This is knowing. This is love that has been through something. Peter walks with his hands open, not clenched. James, usually intense, carries a quiet smile. And John, always near, walks with the ease of someone who feels both protected and purposeful. You fall back a few paces and glance behind you. The Sea of Galilee glitters far below, small now, a soft blue bowl cradled between hills. It looks so distant from up here, and yet it still pulses with meaning. You think again about that breakfast fire, how something so ordinary became sacred. Scholars sometimes say Christianity is built on paradox, that death brings life, that losing is finding, that weakness is strength. But maybe the greatest paradox of all is this, that God, risen and glorified, still prefers to meet people over food and firelight. You reach a plateau and the group begins to spread out. Jesus pauses there and the disciples gather around. The space is open and wide, the view stretching out in every direction. Villages pepper the land below, and far off the faint shadow of Jerusalem rests on the horizon like a whisper. No throne, no fanfare, just a hilltop and a small group of changed men. You don't know it yet, but this is the beginning of the church. Not the church of stained glass and steeples, but of lives transformed by grace, of fishermen who become preachers, of doubters who become doers, of ordinary people who carry extraordinary love. Jesus turns slowly to face them. He looks into each of their eyes, and you watch as the moment deepens. "This is what I told you," he says gently, "while I was still with you, that everything written about me in the law of Moses, the prophets, and the Psalms must be fulfilled." You feel it in your bones, that shift from story to truth. Then he breathes again, not like before, not just physically but spiritually, and something unlocks. You watch their faces soften, their brows lift. They're understanding now. Not everything, but more than before. He's showing them not just what happened, but why. That repentance for the forgiveness of sins, he continues, should be preached in his name to all nations beginning from Jerusalem. There's that word again. Forgiveness. The very thing he offered Peter. The thing that turned morning into breakfast. The thing that made failure fertile ground for love to grow again. Jesus looks at them, all of them, and says, "You are witnesses of these things." Witnesses. Not just listeners, not just learners, but people who will carry the memory and the message. People who will walk into villages and markets, prisons, and palaces whispering the story of the man who died and came back not with revenge, but with breakfast. You realize then what's happening. He's preparing to leave. Not because he's tired, not because the work is done, but because it's theirs now. Yours. This isn't abandonment, it's commissioning. And the strange, beautiful part, he trusts them with it. All of it. Even Peter. Even Thomas. Even you. Historians still wrestle with how quickly this small movement spread across the ancient world. Some call it social genius. Others call it luck. But those who believe know the truth. It spread because it was real. Because love like that, grace like that cannot stay still. Jesus lifts his hands in a blessing. You step closer. His eyes find yours for a moment and you feel it. Not judgment, not distance, but pride. Like a teacher watching a student finally believe in themselves. Like a gardener seeing fruit after a long, quiet season of tending soil. And in that gaze, you hear one more silent question. Will you follow? You nod. Not because you're ready, but because you trust him. And that's enough. The wind grows still. You don't notice it at first. It's so subtle, so gentle. But something in the air shifts. A quiet expectancy settles over the hillside like the whole world is holding its breath. You glance at Jesus. He stands at the center of the circle. Now the disciples gathered around him, their eyes wide, their hearts open. His hands are still raised in blessing. The light behind him seems to glow just a little more brightly now, not blinding, not theatrical, just alive. And then it happens. He begins to rise. Not suddenly, not with fanfare, but like a leaf caught in a slow current of air lifting softly, surely, steadily. Your breath catches. He doesn't strain. He doesn't look back in fear or pain. He rises like one returning home, like someone who's finished what he came to do. And all the while, his eyes remain on them, on you. You take a step forward. The others are frozen in place, mouths slightly open, eyes searching the sky. You feel the weight of the moment pressing into your chest, not heavy, just holy. You remember every word now, every parable, every touch, every time he called someone by name and everything in them changed. And now he's leaving. But not really, because in his rising you feel something descend. A calling, a comfort, a promise. You hear his last words echo in your mind, not shouted, not rehearsed, but etched deep into your soul. I am with you always, even to the end of the age. That's what he said before. And that's what he meant. Even now, even here. Historians still puzzle over how this group of fishermen and tax collectors became messengers to the world. They didn't have armies. They didn't have wealth. They had very little, except one thing. They had seen him. They had sat at his feet. They had eaten his bread, touched his scars, heard his laughter. They had been forgiven by him. And now they carried him not in memory only, but in mission. You look back at Peter. His eyes are still fixed on the sky even as Jesus disappears into the clouds. You can't tell if he's weeping or smiling. Maybe both. Maybe the line between the two no longer matters. You turn slowly and look at the others. No one moves. And then from nowhere, two men in white appear beside them. Not alarming, not loud, just present. Why are you standing here looking at the sky? They ask gently. This same Jesus who has been taken from you into heaven will come back in the same way you have seen him go. The words land like seeds, not immediate, but alive. They will take root in time. And the disciples, they begin to move, slowly at first, back down the hill, back toward Jerusalem, back into a world that will not understand what they've seen, but they go with new steps, steps that will echo through centuries. You stay for a moment longer, standing in the wind. He's gone, and yet he's here. Not in the fire, not in the fish, but in the memory, in the mission, in the quiet resolve that begins to form in your own chest. You will follow, not just by walking behind him on a shore, but by loving like he did, forgiving like he did, serving like he did. You think back to that morning, that fire, that meal, how he made no mention of his pain, how he asked no payment for his grace, how he simply gave. And now you're ready. Not fully, not flawlessly, but truly, because the one who said follow me didn't say it to perfect people. He said it to real ones, and that means he's still saying it to you. You step forward slowly, the earth solid beneath your feet, the sun now warm on your back, and the road ahead long winding but good. And somewhere inside, just beneath your ribs, a small fire still burns. The road descends gently, winding between olive groves and sunlit stones. You walk in silence now, not because there's nothing to say, but because your heart is too full to speak. Each step feels like a quiet vow, not loud, not dramatic, just steady. You glance to your left. Peter is walking with purpose now. There's a new kind of fire in his eyes, not the fire of ambition, the fire of a man who's been forgiven and knows what that forgiveness cost. Ahead of him, John walks softly, eyes forward, like someone still listening to a voice the world can no longer hear. You're walking too. Not in front, not behind, just with them. And it strikes you suddenly how strange and beautiful it is to be part of a story that started with a breakfast. No throne room, no courtroom, just a fire on a beach, a handful of fish, a few men who didn't yet know the world was about to change. And now it has. You think again about what Jesus said to Peter, "Feed my sheep." And for a moment, the meaning expands beyond Peter's life. It opens like a sunrise, spilling gold across everything. It's for every soul who's ever failed and thought they were finished, for every heart too ashamed to believe they could still be useful, for every wanderer who needed not a sermon but a seat at the fire. Jesus didn't just restore Peter. He modeled what restoration looks like: gentle, personal, persistent. You take a breath and feel the road beneath your feet, the same road they walked in sandals worn thin by wonder. Jesus knew this world would be hard. He knew Rome wouldn't understand. He knew the temple would resist. He knew not everyone would believe. But still he made breakfast. Still he asked Peter if he loved him. Still he said, "Follow me." You stop for a moment beneath a fig tree, its leaves dancing quietly above you. You sit in its shade, the bark rough against your back, and close your eyes. You see it all again. The fire, the bread, the soft voice that asks not for explanations but for love. "Do you love me?" You whisper back now with more confidence. "Yes, Lord. You know that I do." A breeze picks up, moving gently across the hills, tugging at the grass. It carries a quiet, invisible promise, the same one spoken in that last gaze before he ascended. You are not alone. The world beyond this hill awaits. People who've never heard the story. People who don't know they're loved yet. People who've been denied by others, and people who've denied themselves. But now, there are witnesses. You stand again. There is no heavenly music, no thunder, just footsteps, just the earth waiting, just a heart ready to love the way he did. You walk toward Jerusalem, but not just there. You walk toward the ones who need bread, toward the ones who need truth, toward the ones who think they've run too far to be found. Because now you know the fire still burns, the invitation still stands. The risen Jesus still says, "Come and have breakfast." And you will never forget the morning he made it just for you. Word count 1, airweight 3. Wind down 300 words. The road fades now, and so does the light. You're no longer on the hillside. The fire has gone quiet. The waves have settled into a lullaby. The voices of the disciples have melted into memory. And yet your heart is still warm, because you were there. You saw Peter jump into the sea, driven not by guilt but by hope. You saw Jesus kneel beside a fire he lit, not to impress, but to restore. You heard him ask the question, not to shame, but to invite, "Do you love me?" And you answered, quietly, truly, in your own way. So now let the stillness come. Let your breath slow. Let your shoulders soften. Let your thoughts drift like clouds across Galilee's morning sky. You've walked far tonight, not in distance, but in depth. You've sat by sacred embers. You've watched forgiveness bloom where failure once grew. You've seen what love looks like when it's not afraid of scars. So rest now. Let the last light of this story dim gently behind your eyes. Let your soul curl softly into the knowledge that grace always finds its way back to the shore. The fire still glows. The waves still whisper. And somewhere just beyond the reach of dream and dawn, Jesus still walks the beach.